Give one more minute just to see if anybody else joins.
Okay.
And for those of you just coming in, just so you know, this program is going to be recorded. Just so you're aware going forward. With that, I'll go ahead and do my little PBS introduction. So hi everyone, welcome to the Quick Tips for October. We're really excited to have you here. The RAP program, which hosts the monthly Quick Tips, exists thanks to the American Heritage Center, the Wyoming State Archives, and the Wyoming State Historical Records and Advisory Board. This program is funded by grants made available through Wyoming SHRAB and by the National Historic Publications and Records Commission. They are administered by the Wyoming State Archives through the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources. And so with that, go ahead, Emmaline. On to the next one for me. Okay. Like I said, welcome to this month's Quick Tips, where we're talking about nitrate in archives, preservation strategies implemented by the American Heritage Center and the Wyoming State Archives. We're joined today by three amazing individuals. We have Bill Hopkins, Cindy Brown, and Emmaline Velasquez. I've never actually said your last name, I don't think.
Velasquez, that's okay.
Velasquez. I'm just butchering names today. We'll see how it goes. And with that, my little introduction's done. For those of you just coming in, I just want to remind you that, wow, a bunch of people are joining. This is just a reminder that this program is going to be recorded. So do with that information what you will, and it will be uploaded to YouTube shortly after the presentation, usually within 24 to 48 hours. And with that, Bill, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Hopkins. I'm the Collections Manager and Assistant Director for the American Heritage Center. And I've been involved with the AHC's nitrate preservation and duplication strategies since the early 90s. The AHC has a very large number of nitrate film. We estimate about 300 cubic feet. Most of it is still photographic film, but we also have nitrate motion picture film. The question about what to do with nitrate has been going on for a long time. Originally, beginning in the early 1990s, we duplicated the nitrate onto polyester film base and then disposed of the originals. That worked well for several years. But then a series of events kind of ganged up and brought a halt to the project, in that our expert photographer retired and the equipment that we were using was increasingly out of date and difficult to maintain and replace. So we started looking for alternatives. By that point in time, this would have been the early 2000s, we had started to convert all of our patron services to digital. And so when we duplicated a negative or a photograph for a patron request, it was done digitally using a 50 megapixel camera. And that was working really well. Also, best practices were moving towards digital duplication of nitrate negatives. And so we started exploring that option. Also at that time, our cold storage vault, which we had had since the building opened, and which coincidentally was never constructed to house nitrate film, but it was beginning to fill up. And so we had some space issues that we had to consider. So in order to start exploring digital, thank you. Yeah, this is our cold storage vault here. As you can see, it's still pretty full. But we acquired a 100 megapixel camera and started duplicating our nitrate film according to industry standards, FADG and best practices, that sort of thing. With each large format negative, or each negative had to be shot as a quad, even with a 100 megapixel camera. So we would essentially shoot 4 images of each negative and then stitch it together with software. This created very, very large files. And so to give you an example, in FY 2023, fiscal year 2023, we duplicated 426 negatives from 2 collections. One of those collections had 175 negatives, and it created a group of files totaling 121 gigabytes. That doesn't seem like much, but when you consider that that was only 0.55 cubic feet of our entire holdings, that starts to become a concern. Also, AHC is responsible for the university archives, and more of that is becoming digital records. So digital storage space, while the cost of digital is constantly going down, digital storage is going down, the infrastructure that supports it doesn't seem to be following suit. For instance, our IT department raised our cost of storage 10% last year. So we started looking at alternatives. And we discovered that, long-term storage of nitrate film was a thing. Many institutions actually do that and then duplicate on demand. AHC itself had been doing it for over 30 years. We have had nitrate film in cold storage with no problems whatsoever for 30 years now, since we moved into this building. So we started exploring the concept of long-term storage of nitrate film using cold to slow deterioration. And originally we had looked at constructing a separate building from our facility that would be a dedicated cold storage. That would make everybody happy. It would make the fire marshal happy because it was rated for nitrate film. It would clear up space in our storage areas. It would allow us to safely handle the nitrate film, and we could continue to duplicate on demand. The cost of a separate facility rapidly went up and finally went over $1 million, and that's when we had to say, no, we can't do this. So we started looking at alternatives, and the alternative that we chose was thanks to the Wyoming State Archives. Cindy Brown, who's going to be speaking after I do, told us about the project that the Wyoming State Archives was doing, which was to purchase freezer units. We were intrigued by that idea, so we started looking into it and discovered that, thank you, that explosion-proof freezers would fit the criteria for nitrate storage. It made the fire marshal happy. It was compliant with NFPA 40, which is the governing document for nitrate film, and it was more affordable. Each of the units is roughly $9,000. And while that seems like a lot, they are modular units, so you can add them over time as you need to. And most places don't have the amount of nitrate film that the American Heritage Center has to contend with. So once we had settled on that, then we had to determine methodology for how we were going to put the film into the cold storage unit. It was relatively easy with our cold vault. We had developed a lot of different ways of doing that because it was both temperature and relative humidity controlled. Freezers are not that way. They are temperature controlled, but they don't really control relative humidity. And so we had to figure out a way to create moisture barriers to prevent condensation. That was achieved by doing, well, we went out to the experts, you know, the National Archives, the Library of Congress, National Park Service, Image Permanence Institute, looked at all of their recommendations. And what we came up with is what you see on the screen now is we purchased a Mylar moisture barrier that we could wrap the packages in. So essentially we put the negatives into an archival box, okay, usually a shoebox, and then we wrap that shoebox with this moisture barrier, and then we put that along with a desiccant packet and a humidity monitor, just a humidity monitoring card, into a plastic sack. And then we wrap the whole shooting match up and we put it into the freezer. Each freezer is rated for about 30 cubic feet. And if you get creative with the packing, you can get a lot of stuff in there. So that has been our solution. We started with, well, we presented this to our board of advisors, who then went out and did a fundraising project for us. And they raised enough funding to fund 10 of these nitrate freezers. We started adding them slowly. Even though we had the money in hand, we wanted to make sure that, one, the freezers that this idea would work. We wanted to acid test it, if you will. Also, we wanted to make certain that adding that kind of power load onto our building's power grid would be sustainable. The last thing we wanted to do was have a bunch of nitrate in freezers and constantly have to resetting breakers and that sort of thing. We also developed a monitoring system for the nitrate freezers. We went to the Onset Corporation. They make the Hobo data loggers. And we discovered that they have an outside data logger that is good for cold temperatures. And it's also Bluetooth. So we were able to install these monitors into each of the freezers. They have an app on your phone, and that app will send you an alarm if the freezer goes out of a set point, either too high or too low. And so we purchased those, got those installed, and those have been working exceptionally well. I go download them once a month just to see how things are going, but I can walk in amongst the freezers at any time and simply look at my phone and see what their current condition of each freezer is. And then last but not least, we started actually moving the film. And that's been a slow process, but again, it gives us time to evaluate things and make sure that it's working the way we wanted it to. And so far, it's worked extraordinarily well. The major issues that we have found are, one, finding the right freezers. These are a fairly specialty item. Solo is one of the corporations that handles these. Darwin Chambers is another. Both of them build units that are very comparable to each other. In fact, they don't build the units, they just market them. While expensive, the units are affordable when you're looking at long-term storage of nitrate materials. And there are no components inside of the freezer cavity of an explosion-proof freezer. So nothing that can cause a spark or a fire. And it also compartmentalizes the nitrate film so that it's not all in one chamber. Adding to that, if a freezer should fail on us, it's relatively easy to replace. So, because it's a modular system. So basically we would transfer the material from one freezer into another freezer and then order a new freezer. So, and as I said, we monitor with the Hobo data loggers, which has worked out extraordinarily well. And so, how did I do? Did I come in on time? Okay. But this may not be a solution for everybody, but it does provide a lot of versatility and different ways that you can approach it. And it has worked extraordinarily well for the American Heritage Center. So thank you.
Okay, Emmaline, next slide. So I figured I'm not going to speak as long because I wanted to give Emmaline as much time as possible. But I wanted to focus on, because I knew Bill was going to do such a great job of describing the issues and the solution and stuff like that. I figured I would focus on the differences between the approach at the American Heritage Center and the approach at the Wyoming State Archives. So the first difference, Emmaline, if you could go to the slide before that one. The first difference has to do with our funding model. So the one right after that. So the AHC, they were able to raise funding through their foundation and stuff, whereas the archives, we applied for a couple grants. So our first huge grant, which paid for most of the project, was from the Cultural Trust Fund. And we asked for grant funding for the freezers and, getting them installed. And then a secondary part to hire a contract employee to come in and help inventory some of the nitrates, because a lot of the boxes are, you open them up, they're just full of negatives, and scan them and box them and get them put away. And so, and then we also applied to the Humanities Council to get additional funding to be able to extend Emmaline's contract. And so I appreciate both groups supporting us and providing the funding. This has really helped us out. So the next slide, Emmaline. Thank you. One of the other differences is, so the American Heritage Center, they're adding film footage and negatives. Whereas in the archives, we just have negatives that are nitrates. So slightly different way to go. Also, we only needed 2 freezers, so we're not quite as extensive as they are. And then this is where we really differentiated. We, instead of going with the Hobo method, the solo factory people recommended this monitoring or library approach, which is on the outside of the freezers and is kind of wired into them. So as you can tell, it's not very subtle, right? You can tell just by looking what it's doing. it also has high and low point warning things, so it'll send an email out to our main email box, and it seems to be copying me, indicating if something's out of compliance. And we've had it happen twice since, well, once we got the loggers working, but I'm not going to go into that story. But we've had it happen twice, and one for each freezer. And the message we received was they'd gotten too low, and so it hit like negative 21 or negative 22, and the negative is not quite as critical as going too high. So, and it fixed itself within hours. So not a huge issue, but it helps us know that the alert system is working. Yes, that's what our two look like. And that's what the inside of the freezer looks like. As you can tell, it's empty. That's another part of the project is, originally I had in mind that we would kind of pack up the ones that we know the negatives have already been scanned off of like safety negs or something, get those put away. But we pivoted and decided we needed to focus on the huge collection that needed all the work and get that done as much as possible. That's the Kerrigan collection out of Casper. And so Emmaline's been focusing on that. She's actually on the last box. Yay. And then once that's done, we'll get those packed up and put in. And it seems like we had just enough that one freezer wasn't going to hold it all, which is nice because you know they always say it's a 35 cubic foot freezer, but does it fit 35 cubic feet? No. So this allows us some leeway depending on how the boxes are going to fit it. And then so I'm talking about the processing workflow a little bit, where Emmaline again is focusing on inventorying them, scanning the negatives, and saving them to the network. And the other key difference between our approach and the American Heritage Centers is our plan is once the negatives have been scanned and everything, we're going to review the scans and dispose of the negatives. Because you can take either approach, right? Our archival community, they come down either way. You either can try to keep them forever, like the American Heritage Center is going to try, or you can get them duplicated as best you can and then properly dispose of them. So that's the big differences between us and the American Heritage Center. So I'm going to go ahead and pivot to Emmaline. And what we're going to do with her is I'm going to ask her a question and have her answer it. Thought that might be the best approach. So you ready, Emmaline?
I think so.
Okay. So there's only 4 questions, but question 1, what do you think is the most important step in your nitrate negative project workflow?
I think this question sort of comes, is the scanning or the inventorying more important? And to me, the question sort of came down to access to the community. The scanning is really important because I upload all of the scans that I do to the Wyoming State Archives website, so anybody can look at those. But the inventory is also important because that identifies a lot of the negatives that you can see are identified. They have a name and they have a date on them, which is very convenient. And so by inventorying, I put those names. You could possibly look up those names if anybody happens to know them. There's also some negatives where they're wearing possible ROTC uniforms. Most of them are school portraits, so you can look up school portraits. So I think the scanning and the inventory are both really important. to preserving and to sharing them with the community.
Thank you. So the next question. So starting with a box full of loose negatives or smaller boxes with negatives inside a bigger box is daunting. Just looking at them freaks me out. How do you handle identifying and describing them?
Yeah, like you said, looking at a large box just full of negatives is really intimidating. My best approach has been to work in small batches. Part of that is because my scanner is only so big, so I can only put in, 6 or 4 negatives at a time. But I also think that's helpful in organizing them. I use a spreadsheet to organize all of them as well. And in my spreadsheet, again, a lot of them are identified. But I also, I mark down the size of them, the quality of the negative, any deterioration, or any other pertinent information to the negative. So as I'm entering in the names into my spreadsheet, for some reason, I happen to recognize some of these names. So I'll be like, oh, I think I recognize this name. I can look it up in my spreadsheet, which is very helpful. I also create 3 versions of a negative. So there's the raw negative, which is the image that you see on the right. There is a edited negative, which is the image that you see on the left. And then I create a JPEG of the image on the left. So all of the JPEGs I put into a separate folder. And of course, as I'm accessioning them and putting an accessioning number on them, I can look up that number in my JPEG folder, which easily brings up any images and like, yes, this negative looks like this other negative. So all of that sort of helps me to stay organized and keeps my flow kind of going. I scan the negatives, I edit them, put them in the spreadsheet, and I kind of do that process all day. So I definitely think that helps to stay organized.
Thank you. And one of the challenges that we didn't expect and why we couldn't pack up the boxes as we go is she'd find a sheet of negatives and one of them would be cut out. And it would show up 3 boxes later. And so we didn't want to pack up this box when we're going to find it later. Right, Emmaline?
Right. Yes. Yeah, that happened quite a few times. You find all of these single negatives in one box, and then, like you said, 3 boxes later, you find all the other 4 poses that go with it. So, yeah.
Okay. And then I think you might have covered this next question about how to keep your work and negatives organized is pretty much covered. So we can, unless you have something more you want to say on that, because it fits into the question before. But we can move on to the last one, which is why is documenting the level of deterioration on the negatives important, and how do you categorize the level?
Yeah, so most of the negatives I would say are in pretty good condition. There have been a few that aren't. So you can see the image on the left. I identified as a level 2 deterioration just because there is some yellowing, and I think it's important to make note of that as it is now, just in case that the negative continues to deteriorate in the future. And then I think the more interesting part is that the negatives have not deteriorated the same across the whole negative. So you can see the image on the right, the bottom, and we scan all of our negatives in color for this reason. You can see on the bottom that there is deterioration, and it's harder to see, but there is, it's a darker amber color that you can see on level 4. And there is some mirroring on the back of the negative on the emulsion side. So I classify those as level 4, even though the rest of the negative looks okay. I thought it was important to keep those negatives separate. So anything a level 3 and I guess above 3, 4, 5, 6, I separate those out and put them into separate boxes. And so yeah, like I said, even though the negative isn't deteriorated across the whole thing, I do separate those out. And it's fairly easy to see the amber color. It's a very distinct color, as opposed to the yellowing. And the mirroring is also very easy to see. Did that answer the question?
Yes, yes, good job. So in our discussions, did I miss anything that you wanted to talk about more, or are we good?
I don't think so.
We'll count
I
that as
think
my fourth question.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, the really interesting part is that most of these have been identified. And I think that's because it was a major photographer in Casper doing a lot of school portraits. So I think we're very lucky in that respect, to have most of them identified.
And it seems like the first set of negatives that you did was a wedding. So that was fascinating, right?
Yeah, yes.
And
There's
so there was
wedding,
external shots and yeah.
yep. There's buildings, there's like automotive businesses for some reason. There are lots of baby portraits. I guess in the 1930s, they would do baby shows. You would enter your baby in for the cutest one. So there's baby show negatives. Like I said, ROTC portraits, school portraits, some general like family portraits. So there's quite a variety, and it's very interesting. You never know what you're going to find.
Thank you. Hey, Morgan, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, like we said, we haven't packaged the boxes yet, but we do have, like Bill, we also thought about the moisture. So we have moisture or vapor barrier bags with humidity cards, and I will spend a day or two packaging all of those and putting into the freezer. So we have yet to do that part, but hopefully it all goes smoothly.
It's an adventure.
Yeah.
And it's like you had to do the math when you were ordering the bags, right? What size box will fit in what size bag? And then you want to fit a bag in a bag. And so, yeah. Anyway.
Actually, Sunny, I'm going to have you elaborate a little bit more on the sizing and how you calculate that. So what has been the process for the Wyoming State Archives for that?
So basically, I went to the company that we purchased the bags from. They actually have a calculator for you. So yeah, it was great. So it wasn't high math on my part, but so of course they end up you end up wanting them to be bigger than you start, and so you know. Bill's approach again, it was slightly different with the Mylar vapor moisture barrier thing, but yeah, it's the same principle. I think his is probably more tight, maybe, because you're kind of wrapping it like a present. Is that too?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you're wrapping it like a Christmas present. It gets me, it gives me some practice for the Christmas season. But it is a very tight seal around it. And so when we were measuring for bags, we basically just kind of measured, okay, how big is this box?
Mm-hmm.
How many of these boxes do we have? And, what size bag did we need? So it, in some ways, I think might simplify, but in other ways, it's more complicated because the moisture barrier that we're using is fairly pricey, but it's nice and foldable. It works really well, and is easy to work with. So it's it's whatever works for you.
The reason why we went the way we did is the bags that we bought are semi-translucent. So you can kind of see what's going on all the way down. But again, they're, and you put it in, and similar to that, you kind of tape it to size on the outside. But again, it's not as tight as what they'll do.
All right, and with that first question, I think we can go ahead and open up the floor to anybody else who might have questions about the preservation practices or just looking for advice on their collections. Feel free to unmute, or I can read off from the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. So yeah, let's open the floor for questions.
Oh, so one of the other things, sorry, I interrupted. One of the other things that I think concerns both Bill and I about our freezers is so they are not frost free because the recommendation is do not go with frost free. And so I worked with Bill and we have a strategy on how each of our areas are going to defrost them when the meteor rises.
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically Bill has
We have a chest freezer, basically.
That's big enough to hold the contents of one of the freezers.
Yeah. So we'll take it all out and pack it in there and then defrost the freezer and then move it all back. And so.
Okay. Anyway, sorry about interrupting. Yeah.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
For the state, I'm curious, since you're planning on disposing of the negatives, that means what you're going to have left, you won't have any physical backup objects. You'll just have the digital images. So I'm curious as how you're going to deal with that, and do you have backups, and what you're doing to ensure I guess it would be the integrity of those digital objects.
So in theory, there's possibility that some of the nitrates may remain. You know, we're going to base it based on value. There's some that you probably do want to keep the negatives on, but the majority not. But in the state archives, we have we manage a system called the Wyoming Digital Archives, and so it was set up specifically for long-term digital records. I don't want to delve into it too much, but it's got the security levels, you know, it's Department of Defense compliance. And once a month we do an integrity check on the different document stores. So basically, when records are added to the digital archives, it generates a hash or a checksum.
Yeah. Okay.
And then once a month it goes through and it verifies the hashes, and it also verifies that the data entry form is still connected to the digital object. So there's nothing going free and wild on us. And then and it's backed up daily, weekly, monthly with one copy somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. And so the digital archives has been around for more than 10 years. So, and has more than 7 million documents. So we feel like on these ones where the standard policy is if there's no original to go with the digital record in the archives, they have to be stored in the digital archives. And then there'll be the derivative that Emmaline develops, the JPEGs. Those will be all available online for the public to search.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's similar to what we do. If we have deteriorating nitrate, we don't keep it. So we'll copy it digitally. And at that point, we treat it like a born digital object. Essentially, it becomes, the digital copy becomes the new original, which means all of our born digital protocols kick in at that point. And it's pretty similar to what Cindy was just describing. Awesome.
We got a few questions in the chat from Gled Hill Library. Are either AHC or state archives, are you using or thought about using a digital assets management system for the scanned objects? So are you using them or have you thought about using them?
We're currently discussing possibly moving over to Amazon S3, and because it's much cheaper, and they seem to have really robust and good protocols, much like the digital archives that Cindy was describing. They have backups, they have all of those protocols that we need for both born digital and digitized material. Another aspect, we do keep all of our digitized objects, but we don't necessarily keep them at using born digital protocols because we're keeping the original. So we still have the original object if we have to go back to it, but we don't want to be pulling it in and out of storage all the time. So we keep every digitized copy that we make, but we don't necessarily treat it like a born digital object and go to that level. We treat it more as an access copy because we can go back to the original. I'm sorry, did that answer the question?
I believe it.
And I didn't really say that, so I kind of answered the question already, but I didn't really tell you all what the software is that we use. And it's actually a records management application because in addition to the permanent records, there's also non-permanent. And so retention schedules are applied to them. And so the software is Open Text Content Manager.
All right, our next question is from Justin at the Rockpile Museum in Gillette. He specified this is for Emmaline. You mentioned looking up the negative in a spreadsheet. Is that a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet or have you found a better program?
I just use Google Sheets. I think a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet would do the same thing. It's literally just using the find tool. So like Control F, and then I look up the name. I feel like I've almost become friends with Kerrigan because I read the handwriting on there. And so if I'm questioning, oh, is this a K or an H or an O or an A? Like, I think I'm going to go with the K so I can spell the last name right. And most oftentimes that's how the last name was also previously spelled. So yeah, so I usually just look up my last name. So yeah, just using the find tool on Google Sheets or on Excel, I think would be the same.
And then our next question is, for the large amount of disk storage needed for digital objects, are you using a local hardware or cloud storage? And how did you arrive at that decision? So whoever wants to take that one first.
Well, I think as I mentioned, we're exploring Amazon S3 right now. We have been storing our materials on the university's servers since we're attached to the University of Wyoming, which gave us the advantage that their emergency response planning, their disaster protocols, we were fitted. Our material was covered under that, but the cost was or is becoming an impact on the budget. So we started looking for less expensive options, but we had to balance that with, will it protect our material? And again, we were looking for both a born digital platform and a digital or a digitized platform. So we looked at several. We looked at Quartex and a whole host of other. Our digital archivist was busy for about a year evaluating various platforms. Amazon S3 looks to be the most promising right now, and it's a cloud storage. So.
And when the legislature set up the digital archives, they named ETS, which is the state's IT department, as our partner on the project. And so ETS does the heavy lifting on the servers and things like that. One of the advantages too is the legislature also provides funding for, they bought the software, they do an upgrade every 2 years, vendor support, all sorts of things. And so, you know, the system is open to state agencies and county, city, special districts. And so basically the only thing that's on them is the amount of the cost of the storage that ETS charges, which is 11 cents per gigabyte per month. And it's totally because the legislature has stepped up and funded the rest of it as part of the budget. So.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Trying to give people some room to, because I have a couple, but I can wait and see if anybody else has one.
I have a question.
Sarah.
Emmaline, where did you find what is a good resource for people to use to evaluate what stage of deterioration the nitrate negatives are at? Is it a free resource?
So I use the, sorry, let me grab it real quick.
It's NEDCC.
Yes, the NEDCC. And you can look up like nitrate negative, I think NEDCC, just on Google. And it pulls up a really nice article of the levels of deterioration. And I keep the visual that you see here in the middle. I keep that pinned right at my cubicle. So I always kind of have that reference. I also have the reference for acetate film deterioration. I have found a few safety negatives among the nitrates. So that definitely looks a little bit different, and it smells a bit different. It smells like vinegar. So that's what I use. And I believe it is free. I've just been able to look that up. There's quite a few good articles put out by universities and things too about nitrate. So.
Thank you.
I had it on a short list, so if anybody wants that Northeast Document Conservation Center leaflet, I've linked it in the chat for you. Yeah, any other questions? Okay, I'll go ahead with one of mine. Bill, we were chatting right before the meeting, and you mentioned that you sometimes have burn tests. My question for you is, what warrants a burn test? Like, how do you decide when to do that?
Well, we made a concerted effort several years ago to locate as much nitrate in our collections as possible and positively identify it. But we're still discovering not motion picture, but still photography film in collections as we process them. And so to make absolutely certain as to whether or not it's nitrate or acetate or polyester, that sort of thing, we still use the burn test method. So we just essentially cut a small piece of the film base that's not covered by the emulsion, because it's the film base that's flammable. It's not the emulsion. So, and we don't want to damage the informational content of the negative, but we cut a small sliver off of it, and holding it with a pair of pliers, we put it in our fume hood and we light fire to it. And if it's nitrate, it burns very quickly, usually with a greenish kind of flame. And if it's acetate or polyester, it just kind of melts into a blob. And so it's a real quick and easy way to identify nitrate. So.
All right. And then Cindy, you mentioned that with the state archives, you follow proper disposal methods. What are those methods?
So I haven't disposed of anything yet, so I can't tell you
Okay.
exactly how it's going to go. But basically, the National Fire Standard says you can't just get rid of them. You have to have a company come in and, I don't think remediate's the right word, but basically deal with it. So I know I was meeting for a disaster workshop in a shroud disaster workshop in Green River recently, or Rock Springs, pardon me. And the fire department, they won't dispose of all your stuff, but if you're going to dispose of something, you might check with them to see if they want to use part of it in their training. So there's that part too. But yeah, there's companies that are set up specifically to deal with the nitrate negatives. Like I said, we're not at that phase yet, so I don't know. So Bill, when you've gotten rid of your stuff, have you, what's your?
Mine's been real easy. I just pick up the phone and call our risk management people and say, I need to send nitrate, I need to get rid of nitrate, and they come and pick it up. But my understanding is that they will put it into a large metal drum, and then they fill it with water for transport. I've never actually seen them do this process, but that's my understanding, is they fill it with water before they transport it, and it's in a 55-gallon drum, that sort of thing. But like I say, I've got it easy because I just call and they come pick it up, and I never see it again. And our business office gets the bill, but that's not my end of the operation. So
Yeah, my guess is when the time comes, we'll reach out to the state fire marshal, work with them on it as well, to figure out our strategy.
Yeah, that's the best approach.
Yeah, there's an ironic story that Bill didn't go into, but it turns out we were both working on our nitrate solutions like at the exact same time, and we didn't know it, right?
It's true, absolutely.
Yeah. And it came up at a meeting I'm in, and I'm like, wait a minute, no, I'm doing this. And so it really came in handy because we, Bill's done a lot of deeper research than I feel like I have. But we can bounce off each other ideas. And that's what I encourage you to do is, if you think you're going to try to work on a nitrate solution, maybe reach out to somebody who's either doing it or has done it, right, Bill?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It was fortuitous. It was completely accidental, but it's worked out really well because we've bounced emails back and forth during this whole process about how we were going to develop, not just buying the freezers, but how to get the material into them safely, and how to package them, how to lower their temperature gradually rather than just shove them in the freezer, things like that. There's a lot of things that a lot of loose ends that you have to tie up. So yeah, I totally support the idea of partnering with other people that are in the same situation that you are, because it just helps to get those different perspectives.
All right, I'm going to open the floor one more time. Any last minute questions? Any comments or concerns?
Well, and I'm sure Cindy will concur, but I'm happy to share any information that we have. Feel free to contact me. I can send you information about the vendors that we've used and how we go about doing things, and that sort of thing. None of it's proprietary. I won't charge you. So.
Well, and yes, and also Emmaline, since she's been on the front line doing all that work, if you have a specific question on scanning negatives, let alone scanning nitrate negatives. She's a good go-to person.
Leave it for one more minute to give people time to type out a question if they have one. Great. Well, Emmaline, will you hit that next slide for me? The very last one. I just want to thank not only our speakers, but all of you for attending today. But especially thank our speakers for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to come and share with us your different strategies, how you work with nitrate and that sort of thing. Like I said, this meeting has been recorded. So if you ever have questions later on, or you remember one part of the session where you just want to go back and revisit it, this will be loaded up on YouTube, hopefully by tomorrow. But thank you again for all of you for joining. Next month, our quick tips will be on pest management. So be on the lookout in your emails or on the Roving Archivist website for any updates on when that is and any additional information about it. But thank you all for joining, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
You all.
Yeah.
Thank you.